Hi, fantasy readers. This is Karyne Norton, your fellow book binger, and you are listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where you can test out a new fantasy story every single week to find your next favorite author. Today's short story is a fun new take on Peter Pan. It comes from the Never Tales anthology, which I've featured before, but there are still tons more great stories in it, and a lot of them have additional related stories in the second volume as well. This particular one is written by Emily Barnett, whose writing is inspired by our weird and wonderful world and the creator who sustains it all. Emily homeschools her two boys, illustrates on occasion, gardens barefoot, and continually worries her husband by using the phrase, "You know what we should do to the house next?" Stick around to the end or check out today's show notes to see where you can find more from Emily. For now, please enjoy The Tinker by Emily Barnett. I flipped through the brittle pages of myths and misconceptions before slamming the dusty cover shut. The clock above my desk mocked me. Tick, tock, tick. Each second reminded me I was almost out of time. "Wendy!" The voice oozed around my ears, and I jolted, knocking over a serum which spilled and poofed my favorite pen into a purple cloud. Gritting my teeth, I turned to the crooked Sir Jim as he slunk into the workshop. "What do you have for me today?" he drawled, his eyes like a storm. I glanced at the bottle of fey dust. Its useless glow seemed to mock me. Ignoring it, I made my way to the wall of cordials, herbs, and whirring machines. My palms sweated. What could buy me an extension? Sir Jim had given me 1 year to produce something impossible, and I was on day 345, with nothing to show for it. Plucking a tiny airplane from a shelf, I shook it back and forth a few times and opened my hand. The plane zoomed around the room, its motor sputtering lavender fumes. For a moment, Jim's eyes gleamed with greed. The plane plummeted. I grabbed at it, but it crashed into a pot of Jolly Jelly jumpers, and the entirety of the jellies dashed about the room with violent exultation. Sir Jim cried out and swatted a blue bean out of his overly large nostril. 3 beans became lost in my curls and yanked my scalp painfully. "Enough!" Sir Jim screamed, his words laced with enough poison to kill an elephant. The Jolly Jelly jumpers fell to the floor with sickening thuds. I rocked back on my heels. Jim's eyes smoldered like embers in his ashy face. "Do you not want to save your brothers, Wendy darling?" I sucked in a breath, then wished I hadn't. The scent of rum and cigar smoke eagerly clung to his mustache and long black hair. "I've done all you've asked." I tipped my chin up to meet his gaze, even though my legs trembled. "I just need more time. I've almost—" Sir Jim cackled with sardonic glee. "You're a tinker. If you want more time, tinker a clock with more hours." He grinned. "But I still want what you owe me. Fuel to fly." He hooked a finger under my chin and pinched my flesh. His iron grip was like ice. "Tick, tock," he whispered, then swept from the room like a wraith. I shivered in his wake. My nerves were shot the rest of the day. The dust would either explode my machines, clog up the cogs, or do nothing at all. But it would not give me the fuel I needed. Sir Jim had taken my brothers hostage when he learned of my tinker magic. But he didn't comprehend that the process couldn't be forced, no matter how many times I told him. Not even Belle, my tinker mentor when I was a child, had pushed her magic. I'd read her notes 100 times, gleaning spells and mechanical insights, but still, I was only 16. After Belle was killed, we hid my powers, and for all I knew, I was the only person left in London who had a touch of magic. Magic I wasn't sure even belonged to normal people like me. But Sir Jim still found me. Though it was legend Belle could turn dust to flight, she'd never written down the how. I desperately needed the how. After a year of trying to make a serum, a gadget, anything that had the semblance of weightlessness, I was stumped. Nothing worked. Perhaps my powers had been weakened by imprisonment, or I was paralyzed by the stress of what would happen to John and Michael if I didn't deliver. lost forever at the hands of Jim Hook, just like my beloved parents. I was the only one who could save them. London's streets were lined with orphans, and no one cared if a few went missing. The rest of the week was much the same. Disappointment, tears, tiny explosions, failure. The last day of my captivity dawned with little hope. My brothers and I would either be released or killed once the clock struck midnight. And as the shadows grew longer and sunlight slipped into the heavy coat of night, my eyes stung with what would come. None of my dust spells had worked. Neither had my mechanics. Whimsical toys would get me nowhere. Tick, tock. Only half an hour now stretched between life and death. I paced the musty workshop, flinging old inventions from shelves as I passed and finding a small satisfaction in the oil that leaked from their parts, staining Sir Jim's floor like blood. When the bell over the shop door announced a visitor, I spun. My blood was ice. But it wasn't Sir Jim who came inside. I blinked, forgetting to be afraid for a single frigid breath. A boy with hair as black as beetle wings stepped inside. He wasn't much older than me, and his eyes sparkled like a morning star about to blink out. The jacket he wore had an unnatural sheen, unlike the dull suits and top hats the men of London wore. I hadn't seen another human besides Jim in an entire year. The boy leaned against the shop counter, eyeing me. A silver watch peeked from his sleeve, but it didn't have an analog face. There were bright numbers on it, and I wondered almost dreamily if it didn't tick at all. I cleared my throat. Can I help you? Had he come to collect me? To do me in? I'm Peter. The boy flashed me a smile, and my heart stalled for a moment. I was rather hoping we could help each other, Wendy. His eyes roamed the shop and landed on a bottle of fey dust, shining gold like the sun. How do you know my name? I asked. Instead of answering, he sauntered over to the dust, uncorked it, and dropped a speck into his hand. Excuse me, I hissed, no longer amused by his charms. I covered the ground between us in a single bound and snatched the bottle, corking it again. What do you want? To break you out of here. I laughed darkly. I can't leave. This boy was absolutely bonkers. Perhaps he'd gotten into Sir Jim's tipsy-turvy turkey brew when I wasn't looking. Hook would kill my brothers if I stepped foot from the workshop, and his men were always watching. Fey dust is wondrous on its own, Peter said, gesturing to the bottle I gripped, as if he hadn't heard me at all. It can cure illnesses or turn red hats to desk chairs. But to be able to fly, you need more than talent. He tapped the side of his head. It's a state of mind. I gritted my teeth. My state of mind hasn't been so dandy since my brothers and I were taken prisoner, thank you very much. John and Michael? He shrugged lightly. They're good. My crew has them. You're what? Sorry it's taken me so long to find you. Our ship's been broken down on Earth for nearly a year, but I just got word Jim had nabbed you. He raised a brow at me. Ready to fly? What? Where? Peter shifted, and I noticed his eyes continued to gleam. Was this windswept boy made of starlight itself? My home planet, Everland. His gaze landed on the bottle in my hand. You're the only tinker left in this horrible world who can turn that dust into fuel. You're our way out. Another planet? I laughed derisively. Sure, and I'm a mermaid's auntie. He grew serious. Are you? Of course not. I rubbed my eyes, glancing at the door. You're certain you have my brothers? He raised one hand in a stoic gesture and covered his heart with the other. I swear on the second star to the right. I wrinkled my nose. Whatever that means. Tucking the bottle into my bag, I slung it over my shoulder. Fine. Get me out of here, and I'll try to help you. Sir Jim would be back at midnight. We had minutes to vanish into London's shadows. Peter grinned as I hurried to the exit, but my hand stilled on the doorknob. My throat grew dry. Jim's henchmen, they're right outside. I eyed the boy. He was tall, but much too lanky for a fight with Sir Jim's men. I've taken care of them, he said with a wink. My grip tightened, fingers whitening. If Peter was wrong. Something flickered in my stomach, and it felt like my magic pressing me to keep going, to trust. I sighed, glaring at him. I was taking a chance on this scoundrel. He'd better not let me down. But my alternative wasn't much better. Taking a deep breath, I pulled open the door and stepped into the street. It was empty. The night air was close and dewy on my skin, and the sky, had it always felt so open? Tears leaked down my chin as I soaked in the sounds and colors and lights of a city I'd been kept from for far too long. It was overwhelming, yet still not enough. My eye snagged on something hovering in the sky, and my jaw dropped. A dark expanse blocked out a section of stars just above the building across from Jim's shop. The longer I stared, the more details I made out. It was round, with tiny blinking lights, and had a hard look as if it were made of metal. I wrinkled my brow and looked at Peter. Is that your ship? He smiled proudly. Spaceship, actually. She's called the White Bird. Then he crooked a brow. What, were you expecting the Mayflower? Was all I could manage. A ship that cruised space in 1896 London? Other worlds? I needed to sit down. But Sir Jim wouldn't be far behind. John and Michael? Already on board. I took a step forward, then glanced around the street nervously. How have you kept the ship hidden? It normally has a cloaking device, but I had to lower it to pick you up. That's why we came at night. Slightly less conspicuous. He held out his hand, palm up. An invitation. A chance. Once we're in the air, we can take you wherever you'd like. His lips curved into a smile, but even so, there was a hint of shyness in his confident gaze. His pale cheeks flushed slightly. Everland might be a nice change of scenery, though, Wendy. He said my name, as if he knew me. As if he'd said my name 100 times before. Have we met? I asked. There was something familiar about him, even in the midst of the unfamiliar. I knew your parents before. He swallowed thickly. Hook. I spit the name like poison. Yeah, him. Wait, if you're from this Everland place, how did you know them? He hesitated. I blinked once, twice, 3 times before realization finally settled over me. My lungs constricted. Was Everland their home too? And your true home, he said with a sad smile. Where do you think the Tinkers came from? You sure as rats don't have magic on Earth. Everland. I tested the word on my tongue. The magic in my gut thrummed like a drum pounding out a song, and it was enough to stir me, to move me. My eyes roamed over the London skyline. Big Ben inched closer to 12. 10 minutes before my deadline. If Peter was right, this city was nothing to me, and the White Bird held everything I loved. My stomach soured. I've been trying for a year to make things fly for Sir Jim, and I can't. Peter's brow darkened, and my chest tightened. I took a step back. Had this been a mistake? I didn't know this boy. What were his true intentions? Had I traded one prison for another? My breath turned shallow. My head spun. Whoa, Peter said, taking my wrists in his hands. I tensed. I'm not going to hurt you, Wendy, and I'm not going to force you to help me if you'd rather get your brothers and leave. His hands fell to his side. I'll figure out another way. But there was little hope in this statement. I was the last tinker that I knew of. There was no other way. I straightened. I'll try again, I said. But what sort of state of mind do I need to be in to make something fly? I asked, remembering what he'd told me in the workshop. Because I have been devoted to finding a serum all year. It will come. His smile returned. Furrowing my brow, I glanced at Big Ben. Tick, tock, tick. Worry etched into me like ink in parchment. If I didn't find a way to make their ship run, we'd all be out of time. Who knew how many lackeys Hook had crawling these streets like cockroaches? Peter stared at me with hopeful curiosity, his eyes like a wild storm, a storm I wasn't frightened of, but drawn to. Nodding once, I grasped his hand. He tugged me to a fire escape on the side of a building. As we climbed, my palms grew slick with nerves. This was impossible. I couldn't accomplish what he wanted. But I could get Michael and John to safety. Somehow. Finally, we reached the top of the building, and Peter flipped open his watch. I gaped as he spoke into it with a strange language, both lyrical and rough. After a moment, a rope ladder dropped from the ship's underbelly, and with it, a silhouette, a shadow, really, of a boy. Peter spoke to the shadow in the same melodic language, and the creature nodded as he held the ladder steady so we could ascend. I frowned at Peter. "Shade's harmless," Peter said, "and great for sneaking into places. He's how I found you, actually." That's supposed to make me feel better? But the clock was still ticking, and this ladder led to my brother's. Clenching my teeth, I climbed the slightly swaying ladder. A London fog rolled in, but I held tight. Almost there. Almost to them. When I reached the top, I swung my legs over the ship's edge. Peter was right behind me, followed by Shade. I turned and was immediately accosted by children, all boys, at least 12 or under. I frowned at the grease-smudged faces. Where are the adults? "No adults here. The ship won't fly with them on board," Peter said, and elbowed me lightly. "You barely made the cutoff." But I hardly felt his jab, hardly registered his words. The crowd parted, and the 2 boys I had given everything for ran toward me. They looked older, and John had a bruise on his right cheek, but they were here, smiling in one piece. We collided, and a laugh tore from my chest. They smelled like dirt and youth and home. A relieved sob broke through me, and I clung to my brothers with such fervor Michael let out a squeak. "We're okay, Wendy." He sniffled into my shoulder. His little voice sent me spiraling back to a world where I wasn't a prisoner, where I was free to run, to climb trees, to laugh and dance, to tinker new creations, part machine and part magic. Pangs of memories swirled through me. Laughter skittering down the hall. Cherry pies on Sundays. Stick sword fights. Plain pirates at the creek. Our parents reading bedtime stories about worlds where magic existed. Quilt forts. Stargazing. Childhood. Warmth flooded my chest and down my arms. My whole body warmed as if I were sitting too close to the hearth. My brothers stepped away, staring at me in confusion. But Peter strolled forward and opened my bag, then plopped the bottle of dust in my hands. "What are you—" I began. The dust changed from gold into a blinding white. My pulse quickened. "That's it, Wendy," Peter said. "The right state of mind." "What is it?" Michael whispered, his glasses fogging. "Our ticket out of here," a round boy said. The warmth seeped out of me, save for my fingers that gripped the bottle. Peter nodded to the round boy. "Toodles will take the fuel now, if that's all right." "Right." I handed the bottle to the boy. "Of course." "All right, crew, positions," Peter shouted, and the children scattered. "Wendy," he asked, turning to me and my brothers, "where would you like to go?" John and Michael were looking at me expectantly, blankly. Our parents were dead. We had no other family. And if we stayed in London, we'd only be hunted. I ruffled John's hair and looked at Peter. Our true home. While the crew got into place, I drifted to the front of the ship, filled with blinking lights and knobs and tubes and wires I couldn't even begin to understand. I stopped at the large glass windows. The vast stars winked over the city. Could we truly be free? I could just make out Big Ben from the corner of the window. Tick, tock. 12 o'clock. Bong, bong, bong. Out of time. Peter stood behind an out-of-place vintage boat wheel in the center of a panel, like it had actually been taken from the Mayflower. John and Michael were already strapped into seats behind him, After a tense moment, Peter pressed a button. "Get that fuel loaded yet, Toodles? You know he'll be unhappy I've stolen from him again." I narrowed my eyes. "Again? Do you know Sir Jim?" The crew's quiet laughter rustled around us like dried leaves. But Peter didn't laugh. His eyes took on a dangerous hue. A storm I wasn't sure I trusted anymore. A spark of dark familiarity. Almost like, "Oh, I know him," he growled. "Bloke's my father." His gaze shifted to mine. "I'm his long-lost son, and I bloody hope to stay that way." My throat turned to sand. His eyes, wild and stormy, just like Sir Jim's. My stomach dropped, and I steadied myself on the cold wall beside me. Peter left his station and touched my arm. "I should have told you, I know, but I needed you to trust me." I wrenched my arm away. "Don't touch me," I spat. My eyes hardened even as Peter's softened. "How can I trust someone who keeps things from me, and the son of that monster?" I wasn't running from my troubles. I was stepping on board to a whole lot more of them. And I was bringing my brothers along for the ride. Nausea rose in my throat, and I swallowed hard. "It's a trust I'd like to earn back one day, but for now, we need to go." He looked back at his station. "Come on, Toodles." Earn back? My eyes swept his face, trying to recall if we'd met before. There was something familiar about Peter, but not enough to dredge up memories. And besides, it wasn't the time. Actually, we had no time. "Won't Jim chase us because you're his son?" The bait had only grown more enticing for him. A tinker and his child. Perfect. "Don't worry, Wendy," Peter said. "I've fought the man for years. Hook has forgotten what it's like to be a kid, to dream and to wonder. It will take him a long time to figure out a way back home." He smiled. Home. Everland. A planet as mysterious as the boy who held galaxies in his gaze, who somehow held my past in his memories. The ship rumbled under my feet, and I swayed, grabbing a seat. The crew whooped in jubilance, and my anxiety lessened as Peter ran back to his wheel, then pressed a lever down. The ship soared over Big Ben and into the deep heavens. Tick, tock, tick. Though worry still lingered, and trust wouldn't come easy, I couldn't help but grin in relief. I'd found my brothers. They were alive, and I'd make sure they stayed that way. Sir Jim thought I'd run out of time, but with a little help from his rogue son, I'd figured out a way to tinker the clock. I hope you enjoyed listening to The Tinker by Emily Barnett, narrated by Karyne Norton. If you want to read more by Emily, go to emilybarnettauthor.com to find more of her books. You'll especially want to check out her YA novel, Thread of Dreams, which is a science fantasy about a girl who steals dreams. You can also subscribe to her Substack, where she has free stories and author updates, at emilybarnett.substack.com. I'll have a direct link for it in the show notes. If you're interested in making a financial donation to the podcast to help keep it running, go to findingfantasyreads.com/donate. All donations go directly towards podcast expenses like hosting fees, editing services, and advertising, allowing us to record more fantastic stories for you. Thank you all for listening, and happy reading.